Good evening, everyone. Just a reminder, if you would, please try to socially distance as you find seats. You can certainly sit with the party you came with, but please try to distance from folks who came with a different group tonight. Very exciting to see our bleachers nice and full tonight with friends and family.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to the May 19th Pelham Board of Education meeting. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. 2.4 is a reiteration of the executive session motions. Sue.
The board met in executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular individual.
Thank you. Welcome. This is super incredible to be here for tonight's celebration. We didn't get to do this last year, so just another one of those moments I'm trying to take stock of as being especially awesome now that we're heading towards normal. So welcome to tonight's Pelham Board of Education meeting. Tonight is very special as we'll be voting to award tenure of 6 teachers, 1 teacher's assistant, and 3 administrators. They have each demonstrated a history of success in their roles within our schools. Our teachers have also demonstrated an ability to bring out the best in our students, creating learning environments that foster respect and a collaboration in their classrooms. Additionally, they have demonstrated their ability to communicate effectively with parents and their colleagues, as well as to contribute to the greater learning community of their schools and of our district. Our administrators have shown their dedication to our students and our schools through their willingness to listen, adapt, manage sometimes competing needs, engender trust, and model leadership. We are so lucky to have these 10 individuals, and I'm so thrilled that we're able to celebrate them here together in person. We are also very happy to have Dr. Callahan and Dr. Thompson here, as well as some of our building principals, to share some lessons learned from the pandemic and provide an overview of internal data that's been collected throughout the year, which has helped inform teachers about student progress throughout this year and will further inform decisions that are made regarding short and long-term steps for our academic program, including our summer offerings. Tonight, we will be certifying the results of the budget vote and the school board election. Thank you to all those who ran, to those within the district who worked so hard on this year's budget development, and the community engagement, and the community at large for your overwhelming support of the budget. Congratulations to Ian Rowe and Michael Owen Machine for winning 3-year terms to the Board of Education. We will look forward to working together beginning this summer when our new board members will begin their term. Now that the spirit of a heated election is behind us, I hope that we as leaders in our educational community can rise up and serve as role models for our students and continue the very important work that is before us. And before I move on, we had our middle school administrative team here last time sharing some important work that they did, and they said that there might be news by this meeting. I thought we were gonna have to wait till one more meeting later. Can you guys come to the microphone and announce the news in case people didn't hear it?
Oh, thank you. So we became a New York State School of Character, and we were going to wait another year or so to apply to become a National School of Character. And Character.org reached out to us and encouraged us to go ahead and go for applying to be the National School of Character. So we had a three-hour review. It consisted of parents, students, administrators, a board member, community members, and we were very proud to say that we are now a National School of Character.
One of how many?
One of 2 in New York and 47.
47 in the U.S., and I think there's one in
Brazil, I think.
Brazil and somewhere else, yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Really incredible.
Thank you.
The next section is administrative and committee reports. 3.1 is the superintendent's report. Dr. Champ.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you so much. And I echo so much of the same comments and sentiment that Jessica shared. Thank you to our community for the incredible support for the 2021 budget. This vote passed with 74% of votes in favor. We had a turnout the same size as the 2018 bond. And just thrilled that the community supported us and turned out in such droves, as they always do in support of our district's public schools. Congratulations to our newly elected trustees, and thank you to our current trustees who will be completing their successful terms with us this year. We appreciate all the work that you have put into the district and everything that you will continue to do as this year wraps up, and look forward to that which is to come in the future. Tonight is one of the most special meetings, in my opinion, our tenure meeting. Tonight, we are so pleased and proud to welcome and recommend 10 candidates for tenure. We welcome those candidates and their families, and we look forward to honoring them this evening, individually in just a few short moments. I have to echo as well what Jessica said. It's so nice to finally be getting back together in person. We did this for the first time, I think it was a few weeks ago, when we appointed the new principal for Colonial School, Rachel Garcia, and I think we all recognized in that moment how badly we had missed being together. So when we realized that, we said we have to do tenure together, and we have to do the retirements together. So many special events that we look forward in the year, and they're special because we are together as a Pelham community and a Pelham school family. So again, we were together to recognize Rachel and welcome her. We were together yesterday, many of us throughout the day, for 2,000 people, over 2,000 that came to the school. Tonight, we're celebrating together this milestone in the educational career of these professionals who give so much to our children and give of themselves day in and day out, especially in a year like this. These are the years that test and try us, and every one of these individuals came through with flying colors in their commitment to their students and to their colleagues and to our district. Tomorrow, some of us will be gathering to celebrate Outdoor Classroom Day. I didn't know such a thing existed until the Simonoi School introduced us to that, but we're going to be having some special gatherings tomorrow. Next month, we look forward to the retirement gathering. In June, we also look forward to a time capsule for the new Hutchinson School. So invitations are going out about that. Events like these, as I said, help us to connect and create common experiences. We'll even be sending some save the dates out for August as we look forward to placing the plaque for the Synertia recognition and also the ribbon cutting on Hutchinson School as we anticipate the opening of school next week. Each of these just help us to recreate those common experiences that we've missed for so long, rebuild relationships and ties that bind us together as a school community. And again, this year more than ever, we all really need these opportunities to reconnect, bond, and restore. And we look forward to this milestone and all the other ones that are coming, and look forward to the traditions that will bring us out of what has been really a hybrid year into what we hope to be a normal year in the fall. Also tonight, we're going to be honoring, as Jessica mentioned, having our curriculum leaders, Dr. Garcia, Dr. Thompson, Dr. Callahan, talk to us about student progress, K-8, throughout this year and what the future holds. So thank them in advance for their hard work and for the insights that they're going to be sharing with the board tonight. And I also wanted to recognize our principals are with us tonight, also to support our tenure candidates, but also to support their colleagues in the curriculum presentation. And I appreciate their efforts as well, and how this whole team of administrators from each one is attentive to both academic progress, student achievement, and in this year, more importantly than ever, social emotional wellness and health of our children. So I really appreciate them, their leadership, and continuing to keep their eye focused on what is best for children in what has been the most unique year in our entire educational career. So thank you all for that. And with that, I am going to actually recommend that we move the personnel section up to move to the main event of the evening.
So do I have a motion to move item 5.1 up in the meeting?
So moved.
Thanks, Sue. Do I have a second? Thanks, Jess. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So
Okay.
this is our motion to approve tenure recommendations, but we're going to go through the
Yes.
presentation first.
So I'm going to go over to the other microphone, and I'm just going to invite each candidate tonight is going to be introduced by a different person on the team. So I'm going to go over there and just invite them one at a time to come up and to introduce the candidate for tenure. And we'll give, if candidate tenure candidates, if you'd like to say something, you may. Don't feel that you have to, but you're more than welcome. Linda Haynes, if you could meet me at the podium, we're going to start with you. And Susan Gilbert to introduce.
I thought I'd never get to do this again. Can you hear me? To Linda Haynes. On the evening of her tenure appointment as a teaching assistant in the Pelham Public Schools. Each of us is responsible for creating an environment of warmth and consideration for those we love. A good day is a day in which I have been able to make another's day more loving and special for them. We must treat each other with dignity, not because we merit it, but because we grow best in thoughtfulness. These words of Leo Buscaglia describe teaching assistant Ms. Linda Haynes. Ms. Haynes has spent this year working as a special education teaching assistant with a group of very special young children. Linda is a caring and patient teacher who has pride in her work and serenity in her soul. She can be seen dancing with the children in music class, or helping children to be active in the gym during physical education, or providing support for children in the creation of art. Her enthusiasm for bringing joy to her students is infectious. Even with COVID, masks, and shields, Ms. Haynes has enthusiastically engaged in the learning environment. Her flexibility, care, and willingness to learn best practices is valued and appreciated by her colleagues. She gives 100% of herself to her students and her colleagues, and always with a smile. Linda, on behalf of the Colonial community, I want to congratulate you on your tenure appointment and to your continued success in Pelham.
I just want to say that I'm so thankful to be here and honored to have received my tenure in Pelham. It's a wonderful community, and I just want to thank administration and all the staff members, my coworkers, and even parents, just for their wonderful support. And it has just been an incredible experience. I love the children here within the district as well, and I enjoy it, and I look forward to continuing doing my best. Thank you so much.
Next, I'd like to invite Ms. Sabia up to introduce and recognize Samantha Horn.
Too many papers. Samantha Horn has earned her BA from SUNY New Paltz, and her master's in literacy from Manhattan College. When asked on her application what her philosophy of education was, I don't know if you even remember this, you quoted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of education. And nothing is more true than that." Samantha is a bright, charismatic, and creative educator. She came to us with a strong background in reading and writing interventions for middle school and high school students. In her role as the English enrichment teacher, Samantha utilizes her training to design interactive student-centered units, helping students think critically and improve study skills, reading, and writing strategies. Since joining Pelham, Samantha never stopped learning. She has taken many courses to extend her understanding of middle school instruction, whole brain learning, social and emotional supports for students. Sam also attained a New York State Extension certification in English language arts for grades 5 through 9. Samantha has worked with her grade level partners to revamp the English enrichment curriculum to ensure that courses align with the supports and support students' experiences in their language arts classes. Samantha is never afraid to try new things in a lesson, from book tastings that help students prepare for their next book club to mystery item challenges to build inferences and visualization skills. On any given day, Samantha combines engaging activity with research-based instructional strategies. Samantha seamlessly integrates technology into her instruction. She has not missed a beat when we transitioned to virtual, then to hybrid. She works with her colleagues to create the online 6th grade Pelican Theater for the Spring Mystery Unit last year that integrates all of our online resources to keep the 6th graders motivated. Samantha is very involved in the middle school community. She serves as the advisor to the middle school student government. As such, she leads many school projects, activities, and on her grade level partners, she is enthusiastically working. Samantha has a positive attitude in both the classroom and out of the classroom. She always has something to share with her colleagues and often looks for interesting ways to engage her students. Her students often comment on her exciting lessons and her funny memes. She is a whiz with technology and has been a huge support for her colleagues during the school year. I want to congratulate Samantha on her tenure.
Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you, Lynn, Sean, and Maria, for all of your support. I feel so lucky every day to be a member of this community. it's been quite a journey, and I know that we're all working so hard together, and I'm just so fortunate to be a part of the Pelham family, so thank you.
And I'm going to have Ms. Sabius come back to now recognize Daisy He.
Since 2005, Young Tong Hee has been the Mandarin teacher for Pelham Middle School and Pelham High School. Ms. Hee is solely responsible for initiating, maintaining, nurturing, and growing the Mandarin Chinese program from grades 6 through 12. Due to her creative teaching strategies, her excellent organizational skills, her phenomenal technology skills, and her strong work ethic, Pelham Middle School District now is renowned for a successful Mandarin program beginning in grade 6 and culminating in the upper-level Mandarin electives. Daisy, as we call her, is a tremendous asset to our school district and the United States educational system as a whole. Successful teachers of foreign language must be fluent in their target language as well as the native language of their students. This enables them to make cross-cultural comparisons, which allows students to effectively internalize the target language. Daisy has been dedicated to her own language and culture, as well as embracing English language and American culture. Ms. He was recently published in China. She wrote an article in Chinese about teaching Mandarin as a foreign language in New York, which has been included in a book about teaching Mandarin abroad. In addition, Ms. He assists counselors with information on colleges that have excellent Mandarin programs. She translates district documents for new student enrollment and registers. She also acts as a translator for Mandarin-speaking families who are new to our district. She has become a strong partner in the Pelham community, working with the Pelham Art Center, the Pelham Public Library, and all 4 elementary schools to bring authentic Chinese culture to Pelham. Ms. He is also the advisor of the Mandarin Club in the middle school and the Asian Culture Club in the high school. She plans 2 or 3 cultural outings for students each year. She brings her students beyond the confines of the classroom to enrich their studies and further ignite their passion for Mandarin. Ms. He is always willing to help colleagues and coworkers. Her knowledge of technology and computer savvy supports the entire world language department, and she has redesigned curriculum in order to meet the needs of the 21st century students. During the COVID pandemic, her colleagues relied on her to help them with relevant teaching and technology assistance. We consider ourselves extremely lucky to have Ms. He as a member of our school faculty. And after 7 years, because she started out part-time in Pelham, I am happy to recommend you for your much-deserved tenure.
I just want to say thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all your support for the Mandarin program and for me in the past 6 years. And also thank you, all my dearest colleagues. I feel so lucky to be here in Pelham. Thank you very much.
And now I'd like to invite Dr. Callahan to the microphone to introduce our next candidate, and that is Lisa DeSeglio.
If I were to accidentally go into my presentation for later on about data, this is the tenure candidate that would probably appreciate that the most. After almost 6 years in the district, it gives me great pleasure to say a few words on Lisa DeSeglio's well-earned recommendation for tenure. Just a few months into my own time here in Pelham, Ms. DeSeglio was hired to fill a calculus position that was vacated by the early departure of her predecessor after just 3 months on the job. As many of you know, finding a math teacher after the year has started is very, very difficult. finding a good one is even more challenging. With Miss DeSeglio's arrival, like her beloved Mets this season, things turned around quickly and stability was brought to classes that were in need of more guidance in this difficult subject area. Since then, Lisa has taught anywhere she has been asked to in our secondary program. She has spent time as a tech teacher, a middle school teacher, and in any math class ranging from algebra up through the aforementioned calculus classes. In accepting any one of these assignments, she has proven to be one of the most flexible, accommodating, and well-planned individuals in our entire department. Most people also know that Ms. DeSeglio is one of the first to arrive in the building during the week. Some of us joke that she may even be turning off the alarm. She has her own style, which is characterized by a calm presence in the classroom. When I asked her colleagues for some words that describe her, they said dedicated first, available, cool, and collected. Her actions speak louder than her words because she doesn't self-promote or advertise her accomplishments. She just shows kids she is there for them by always being there for them. What people may not know is that without Lisa, and again because she doesn't promote any of this, our math team might not have a coach, and they went to states this year. Our AMC math programs in the high school and the middle schools would not have run during our virtual times during the pandemic. Our extended academy support sessions may not have been adequately staffed on the math side. And we may not have a 100% pass rate in our Algebra Regents summer program, with every student scoring 84 or higher since she took over about 4 years ago. Unlike the Red Sox in 1986, Miss DeSeglio does not disappoint. Watch this one, ready? Nothing gets past her. All right, not even in the 10th inning of a game that could win you a World Series. I know the Bill Buckner reference is from before her time, but it still stings for some of us Red Sox fans. But if you've been to Citi Field, that encapsulates Lisa's classroom. When you walk in, it's all about the fan. It may not appear to be the flashiest ballpark in the MLB, but it's a place you are proud to bring your kids. It's got the right feel for a warm experience at a ballpark. Lisa's classroom is all about the student, and it has that really good feel. Like her Miracle Mets, Miss DeSeglio is amazing, and we are so lucky to have her. I know she is early on in her career, and it's just the beginning of a long season. This was quite an inning. But I am certain that when the time comes to reflect on her career, we'll have our very own Hall of Famer. For now, let's just celebrate this grand slam for our Pelham team. And thank you to the BOE for your support, and congratulations to Miss DeSeglio on this well-deserved honor.
Next, I'd like to invite Dr. Fitzgerald to the microphone to introduce our next candidate, Ms. Leilani Rubrick.
You ready? To be a student in Ms. Rubrick's class means that you're greeted each day as you enter the room with a smile and a warm welcome. You can count on your day always ending with a personal goodbye. And in between, there's a lot of laughter, community building, respectful debating, singing, and a whole lot of learning. Mrs. Ruprecht combines great teaching with her caring and kind ways, a humanity all her own. She encourages, inspires, and uplifts her students every day through her words and her actions. In speaking with her students, both past and present, I asked them what makes Miss Ruprecht so special. They responded with comments such as, "She makes me feel like I matter. I know she cares about me. Her kindness is contagious, and she makes me feel like I belong." That last comment, "She makes me feel like I belong," is one powerful statement. A sense of belonging is what we all strive for. Maslow's theory of motivation highlights the need to belong, and research confirms that students who feel a strong sense of belonging in their classroom and school community have higher levels of motivation and academic achievement. Therefore, it's really no surprise that when you walk into Miss Ruprecht's classroom, there is an electricity to the learning that is taking place. Mrs. Ruprecht is also highly respected by her colleagues. They describe her as a team player who always comes up with innovative ideas and lessons, a problem solver, a supportive friend and great listener, someone who is very empathetic, who listens and gives great advice. Miss Ruprecht is one of the most positive people we know, and her smile lights up any room. On Friday afternoons, Miss Ruprecht and her class are famous for dancing their happy dance, happy dance, happy dance, to celebrate all that they have learned and accomplished that week. In a similar vein, I am thrilled to be able to recommend Miss Ruprecht for her tenure and to do the happy dance, happy dance, happy dance, to celebrate Miss Ruprecht and to acknowledge the positive difference she makes in the lives of the students and staff and families in Pelham. Congratulations.
I just want to say thank you so much for all of your care and support. Pelham is such a special place with such wonderful people and amazing students, and I'm glad to be a part of it, so thank you.
Dr. Fitzgerald is now also going to introduce our next candidate, Ms. Frances Corelli.
Buenas noches, good evening. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines the word gift as a notable capacity, talent, or endowment, and as something voluntarily transferred by one person to another without compensation. When thinking about Senora Corelli, gift is the perfect word to describe her. From the moment Senora Corelli joined our team, we knew she was something special. She creates interactive and engaging lessons that incorporate music, movement, dialogue, culture, and of course, technology. The fast-paced lessons, entirely in Spanish, meet students where they are and help ignite their desire to learn more. During the pandemic, through virtual, hybrid, and full-time in-person learning, Senora Corelli has been 100% present for her students, ensuring that they had access, resources, and most of all, the confidence to succeed. In addition to her passion for transferring her knowledge of the Spanish language and culture to students, Senora Corelli has also made a big impact on her colleagues. They often comment that Fran is very intuitive and caring. She generally wants the students to learn to speak Spanish, and whether she's aware of it or not, her colleagues, including me, are learning Spanish just by listening to her teach her students. Senora Corelli is a team player, ready to pitch in as needed, whether it be to help translate for a family or welcome students to school each morning as they enter through the school doors. Fran is the true definition of a gift, and we could not be more grateful that she shares her talents with our students and colleagues every day. I am thrilled to be able to recommend Senora Corelli for tenure in the Pelham Public Schools. Felicitones, wait, I'm going to get it right. Felicitones Senior Corelli. Congratulations.
A huge thank you to everyone for making me feel so welcome. Administrators, peers, parents, community, especially the 16 teachers in the classrooms where I push in. They make me feel welcome every week. And it's, really a hard thing pushing in, but they make me feel so welcome, and the kids are so welcome. And I do want to say, as a foreign language teacher, and I like to really say more language acquisition teacher, that I do strive to perfect my craft every day, and getting recognition like this makes me want to perfect that even more so. So I do appreciate that support so much. Thank you.
And next, I'd like to invite Mr. Johnson to introduce our next candidate for tenure, and that is Paige Hefter.
Raise this a little bit. All right. This yep. Take this off so I don't sound like a Charlie Brown character. All right, so we have people going over one page. We got people dancing, people speaking Spanish. So Paige, tomorrow I'll sing you a song. So first, I would like to thank the Board of Education, Dr. Champ, and the entire administration cabinet for allowing me to speak on Paige's behalf. Thank you to my Illinois teachers that are in the crowd that came to support their friend. It's a true definition of family, so I like that. And lastly, congrats to all the tenure recipients tonight, including Fran, who is also part of the Illinois family. Two of my colleagues, Janine Carr, someone who I consider a friend, Sean Llewellyn, AKA the godfather of Pelham, and to Mr. Jim Rickey, one of the smoothest men I've ever met. Truly a great honor, and you should all be proud. But back to Paige, who this night is really about. When I arrived at Illinois, Paige would talk me through anything and everything. If I had a question, Paige had an answer or suggestion. If I was hungry, Paige had a food recommendation. If I needed another perspective, Paige was there to offer it. And as the year went on, I learned that this is just who Paige was. A selfless, hard-working, and given individual who wanted everyone to succeed. Then I had the pleasure to get to know Paige as a teacher through observations, conversations, and various other interactions. Teachers that are beginning their careers should definitely take a page, wordplay, from her book. She is a natural caregiver when it comes to the nurturing yet expectation-driven aspect of her teaching style. She communicates well with parents and is always trying to get better. She is here early and would argue on a daily basis to stay late, often met with, "Go home, Paige, tomorrow is another day." I can stand up here all night and share stories of how Paige makes my job as an administrator that much easier, or how she leads by example and will do whatever is necessary to change the life of a child for the better. But I will wrap this up by saying simply, thank you. Thank you, Paige, for unapologetically being the person that you are. You have a wonderful soul. Thank you to your parents for obviously raising a young woman that has values, a tireless work ethic, and a passion for what she does. Our students at Illinois are fortunate to have you there as an educator. Enjoy your night. Celebrate for the rest of the year because it was a long road to get here and you deserve to enjoy everything that comes with this. So thank you and congrats.
You're so tall. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. As Mr. Johnson had said, boy, it has been a journey. From starting at Hutchinson and working my way to Colonial and now ending up at Illinois, It has been an absolute pleasure getting to know all of the different students and families that make up the Pelham community. I'm so fortunate to be a part of this family, and every day I strive to change the lives of students when they're actually changing my life every day. So thank you so much.
Congratulations. And next, we're going to move to administrator. So I'm going to invite Ms. Sabia back up to honor an early tenure grantee this evening.
Sean Llewellyn. Sean Llewellyn holds a BA and an MA from Adelphi University. Mr. Llewellyn came to Pelham in 2010 as a seasoned teacher and administrator. Sean taught high school English and served an assistant principal in 2 different schools and has been tenured 3 times already. Mr. Llewellyn was hired in Pelham before tonight. It'll be 6 times. Yeah, but so you came tenured 3 times. After tonight, it'll be 6 times, but okay. Mr. Llewellyn was hired in Pelham as the ELA curriculum supervisor, 612, and he taught high school English. During the time he taught high school English here, he created high-interest senior-level courses, as well as revised the core reading lists and created common benchmark assessments. He was tenured as an English teacher in 2012, and then again as an administrator here in Pelham in 2013. In 2015, Mr. Llewellyn was appointed as a supervisor of the International Baccalaureate Program and was the leading force in Pelham Middle School to be named an International Baccalaureate World School. He worked tirelessly, providing all the professional development for our teachers, administrators, as well as leading the site visits and completing the daunting application. When I was appointed as principal, I went right to Dr. Champ and requested that Mr. Llewellyn be the assistant principal. Throughout the years of working with Sean as the IB curriculum leader, I knew it would be a perfect fit, and I was right. Mr. Llewellyn shares my vision to create a caring and motivational environment for students, faculty, and staff. Together, we want to continue to focus on the whole child's social, emotional, and academic development as we continue our work toward becoming culturally proficient as a school community. Pelham Middle School has always prided itself on its rich academic programs, along with the whole child approach. Moving forward, our goal will be continue to embed the tenets of the IB learner profile in all that we do. Mr. Llewellyn's extensive experience as a supervisor of the International Baccalaureate has played an integral role in achieving this goal. One of the roles as the assistant principal is managing student behavior and decorum. Mr. Llewellyn sets a tone of patience and acceptance in dealing with students, faculty, and parents. He works closely with our counselors and psychologists to create opportunities for growth, understanding, and development through the disciplinary process. Mr. Llewellyn has transformed our master schedule. His attention to detail and ability to see every moving piece is nothing short of amazing. Sean works in collaboration with our school-wide activities team to create monthly lessons and engage students in positive behaviors aligned with the IB learner profile traits. As a result, the Pelham Middle School has been designated a No Place for Hate Gold Star School. Another goal was to become the New York State and ultimately the National School of Character. And I'm proud to say, with Mr. Llewellyn's help, hard work, not to mention the application he had to do, we have done just that. As assistant principal, Mr. Llewellyn plays a key role in sharing and supporting our collective vision. He is a gifted educator, an academic leader, a lifelong learner. This makes Sean's 6th tenure, I hope his last, and I hope some of it wears off on me, rubs off on me. No wonder he's received tenure so many times, and hopefully this is his last. And Sean, I couldn't be happier for you and for me that we get to continue our journey together. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, one of the best things that you can hope for in a career is to wind up in the place where you really feel that you belong. And after a lot of bouncing around, I think I found my place here in Pelham. I live on Long Island. I don't know if any of you know this. To people on Long Island, this is upstate New York right now. And so when people ask me about my work, why'd you drive upstate every day? I said, well, you have to have a sense of how great my job is. When I was asked if I was interested in being assistant principal at the middle school, I had a colleague who no longer works in the district come up to me and said, you want to be an assistant principal again? To which I said, no, I don't. I want to be Lynn Sabia as assistant principal. And I will say that Lynn, along with our fantastic staff and students, makes Pelham Middle School really a miraculous place to work every day. And I feel so, so lucky that I get to finish out my career in this role. I want to thank Dr. Champ and the Board of Education for your generous decision to provide me with tenure early. You won't regret it. I will continue to be very, very dedicated to the school in this district, and I look forward to many more years working with Ms. Sabia. Thank you very much.
And I have the honor of the last two recognitions this evening. So at this time, I'd like to invite Janine Carr to join me. So I had the privilege of meeting Janine when I first started in August of 2017. She had begun a month before me, and I quickly knew that my predecessor had made a great choice in hiring her. Not only does she have great taste in shoes and handbags, which I completely respect, but she's a devoted mother to Hudson. She tells it like it is, with compassion and humor, and has outstanding training as a leader, coming to Pelham from a superintendent that I hold in the highest regard. I was incredibly thankful for that, as my first year in the district was dominated by the bond, and I needed her to be able to hit the ground running. She did not disappoint. Janine has shaped Prospect Hill into a learning community where professionalism is expected and valued, and where learning is at the heart of everything that they do. She has distinguished herself as a literacy leader in the district, yet has also remained attentive to STEAM, the arts, and meeting the social and emotional needs of her students. She has served on the district's literacy, MTSS, bond steering, authentic learning, and reopening task force committees. She has a scheduler's mind and a clear vision for quality teaching and learning, which when combined have enabled her to design a school environment that brings out the best in her teachers in order for them to bring out the best in their students. Her building runs like a well-oiled machine. Her accomplished staff members demonstrate the utmost respect for her, and she is a visible presence in the classroom and a clear support to her students. Mrs. Cirillo shared the following about Janine. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Exactly. Ms. Carr is a compassionate leader who cares deeply about our community and is enthusiastic about making each day at Prospect Hill better than the last. From the onset of her tenure at Prospect Hill, Janine has cultivated a culture of authenticity and celebrates the differences every member of our community brings. Because of this and her approachability, she has earned the love and respect of the people she serves. Whether Ms. Carr is reading to students dressed as Pete the Cat on World Read Aloud Day, covering a class because a teacher is stuck in traffic, or a teacher has to leave early because his or her child is sick, whether she's driving around Pelham picking up care packages for hospital workers during last year's site-based Be a Light campaign, or joining a class Zoom dance party, or playing basketball and kickball during recess, it is obvious that she considers us her family. It has been wonderful working with Ms. Carr. Just like the fifth grader wrote, I too am inspired by her hardworking mind and have grown tremendously as a teacher under her leadership. Additionally, Ms. Martin shared these words. It has been said that adversity does not build character, it reveals it. To say that this year has been challenging would be an understatement. Janine was challenged by the ever-changing regulations, and she adjusted and adapted with poise. She portrayed each twist and turn as a journey that we were all traveling together. She led from the front and never asked us to do anything that she hadn't already done or wasn't willing to do herself. Janine's ever-positive attitude took the edge off for those of us who were personally nervous about so many things, especially not being confident teaching in this new forum. Her unwavering support freed us up to forge ahead without being afraid of trying, failing, regrouping, and then succeeding. Janine did it by offering continued encouragement, always asking, "What do you need from me?" Her ongoing support led us toward excellence and helped reveal additional character within each one of us, all in the midst of a global pandemic. Her colleagues feel similarly, sharing these thoughts. She always uses what is in the best interest of students as the benchmark for her decision-making. She is empathetic, supportive, and highly intelligent. Janine has an excellent working knowledge of the needs of the students and staff at Prospect Hill and makes decisions using those needs as her guideposts. In very high-stress situations, Janine uses her great sense of humor in order to diffuse the tension and put others at ease. She is easy to talk to and has the ability to build strong relationships. She has great insight and is always willing to help. She stands up for what she believes in and gives reasons behind why she takes the stands that she does. Janine keeps her vision at the heart of all of her decisions. She is a true instructional leader. She knows her stuff, and if she doesn't know something, she does not let her ego get in the way. She's honest about needing more information, but follows through to get that information. We can always count on her to be a team player, to make us laugh, and to have the worst poker face. It is for all these reasons that I am honored and thrilled to recommend Janine Carr be granted tenure in the Pelham Public Schools.
I will be quick. My life has gotten so much better since you hired Fareed. He told me to say that. Truly, and he probably didn't think I would. Truly, 4 years ago, stepping into Prospect Hill was like a fairy tale, and not because it looks like a castle, and not because I feel like the queen every time I get to walk up the stairs in the grand hallway, but because I get to interact with the best students and families every single day, and it doesn't feel like a job. And I have to mention, I have the best work family. Those that are sitting here, those that are at home. I love coming to work every single day, and I work with the best administrative team, and I just thank you all for your support, and I thank you for tonight. Thank you.
The last box, Mr. Jim Rickey. And Jim. I don't have flowers, but I do have something to give you afterwards. I just couldn't bring it in.
No booze in school.
No booze in school. Jim. I also first met Jim when I started in Pelham in August of 2017, a month after he started, which he will always and forever remind me that he's more senior by 1 month. We immediately connected on a personal level, as he is the father of 3 girls, and I was one of 3 girls in my family, and I have the utmost respect for the fathers of 3 girls. They are special people who have learned to navigate the whirlwind of emotions that a house full of women can create, a true life skill that serves them well, especially in an environment like education. Jim brings a deep background in financial expertise in both the municipal and public school sectors. Not only does he understand education from the financial perspective, he also understands it from the governance and family perspective, as he has served on the White Plains Board of Education for 12 years and was just elected to another 3-year term last night. Congratulations. Jim is also married to an accomplished educator, has the second of his 3 daughters completing her senior year this year. William and Mary for number 1, Naval Academy for number 2. What is in store for number 3? Pretty amazing. Clearly, Jim is reaping the rewards of everything that he has invested into his family, his community, and his career. The district has benefited from his business and financial expertise, which is seen in so many ways, including his partnership in development and oversight of the 2018 capital bond projects, both the construction and the financial aspects. The district's reduced reliance on reserves, the solid AAA rating, his continued focus on auditing of processes for compliance and improvement, and robust development of policy around financial practices. Additionally, Jim has taught us a few new sayings like belt and suspenders, and my favorite, swallowing the rat. If you don't know what that means, you can see me after. Jim draws from his prior experiences to analyze current situations and develop reasoned approaches to solving problems. Whether it's the budget, a reserve strategy, a community issue, or a labor issue, he's always able to draw upon prior knowledge to reach decisions. He also shares the information he's relying on to make those decisions so that you can come to better understand his approach. According to Jim's staff, he's caring and understanding. He is calm, has a can-do, we-can-get-it-done attitude. He likes to get the job done right in a professional and timely manner. He has the ability to remain calm under pressure. Even when faced with extremely difficult situations, he rarely seems fazed. He has the ability to diffuse a tense situation with humor, and again, has many funny phrases. Jim cares deeply about his family, and the devotion he has to his own children clearly extends to the way he puts students first in his work in Pelham. He looks after people in a caring way, and supporting the students, teachers, staff, and faculty as individuals is no small task. He listens closely to others and makes them feel heard and validated. He has the ability to listen to a variety of perspectives and concerns and to take them into consideration when solving a problem. Not only does he have vast knowledge regarding his job, but he also has knowledge in all facets of life. He would be the perfect partner to have in Trivial Pursuit. And finally, from his coworkers, Jim could sell salt to a slug. He has a way about him that just makes you want to listen, learn, and work with him. He is just an awesome person. In our first year of working together through the bond referendum and through every budget season, Jim has been there for me personally. Even when he's being Uber dad and driving his daughters all over the East Coast, he is still right there via Google Meet, text, or phone to answer technical questions, problem solve, and provide wise counsel. It is for all these reasons that I am proud and thrilled to recommend him for tenure in the Pelham Public Schools.
Thank you. I guess I have to swallow the rat and talk now. Thank you to the Board of Education and to the Pelham community. It's certainly been an honor. And to everyone receiving tenure this evening, congratulations. I'm certainly in awe of you. I'm not an educator, and I see the work that you do, and it's really terrific work. It really is. So congratulations to you. And thank you to my coworkers who are here and who I come to and I work with every day. They're really the greatest group of people I've ever worked with. I've worked in a couple of different places, and they are really, truly outstanding. So very fortunate to work in Pelham. You've got a great community here. I think you already know that. I don't mind telling you that, too. So thank you so much.
But we need to appoint them.
Oh, right.
We need to make it official.
That's right.
So, do I have a motion to approve the tenure recommendations of this evening? Thanks, Jess. Second. John. Any questions, comments? Total amazement of all of you. All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Never mind.
John, go for it.
No, I just wanted to say I was so impressed by the people here and the presentations. And I took the time to look through this. This is a publication that sort of compares all the school districts in Westchester. It's published by the Westchester's Putnam School Boards Association. And I'm a nerd, so I like to look at all the numbers and stuff. And it's amazing how we stack up against these other school districts. It's because of our teachers. And especially in the foreign language, it's astonishing what we've done. Since I was on the board the first time, the amount of foreign languages we're teaching now, it's unbelievable. And I think that's really, that's something that really stuck out at me. So congratulations to you all. You're doing a fantastic job. And I hope you continue. Aye.
No, that's wonderful. I'm glad. You want to say something?
No,
Anybody?
I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure we took the actual.
Yes, I'm not going to forget that, but I didn't want to cut anybody off. So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Congratulations.
It's official.
So, we're going to take a brief pause for a picture. And so anybody who's here for tenure, go find.
Yeah, if we could have the tenure candidates all come right over here.
With
We're going
Alex
to take
Wolf.
a quick picture, and we'll leave a couple minutes to take pictures with your families after that as well.
What time?
What?
Have a very clear safety committee.
Okay, good, thank you.
I think that's next on the agenda.
Are we all set again? Yes? Okay. So this brings us back from 5.1 to 3.2, which is the Board of Education Committee reports. We have a safety committee update from Ms. Childs.
The Safety Committee met this morning, and I will do this report in conjunction with Jim Rickey, if he does not mind. So the Safety Committee met this morning, and primarily we discussed, we introduced the Alteris safety consultants to the committee. Some had not met our representative before. And we walked through our draft district safety plan. So the safety plan is something that is required by the state. It goes through several different iterations. Today was an opportunity to go through the first draft. I had to leave the meeting a little bit early, Jim, so I know that there are a couple of other agenda items that were covered, but evacuation drills update was one of them. Reunification kits and an update on cameras as well, too, was discussed today. So anything else that's important that I missed?
About the first had to do with go bags, and which really it's an emergency bag that that you can put behind the door of every classroom. It's becoming a standard in a lot of different schools around the region. It's packed with different emergency supplies that you may need, class lists and such like that. Really recommendation from Altiris is that we look to move forward with that, and the group had a consensus that we do that, and we're looking to do that so that we have them in place for the beginning of the next school year. So that was really great. And then the other part is has to do with partnering with our local public safety agencies. The Hutchinson School, as you know, when the new building comes online, the other building will be demolished. So what we have done is we have reached out to our public safety partners, police departments in both villages, fire departments in both villages, trying to provide a training opportunity for all of those departments to train in the current Hutchinson building before it's demolished. And really a cooperative training opportunity. They're really excited to do it, and we want to coordinate that with before the demolition is done. If you think about it, kind of one last lesson for the school, and it's really great, and we're happy to be able to do this. I think they're excited to do it. There may be some interdepartmental training with that as well. So I think it's a really positive thing that we're able to do.
Yeah, so we had representatives on the call from both police forces today, from both fire departments as well too, and our community members who have deep expertise in this area, who we are very thankful are serving on this committee as well. So it was a good meeting.
Are there any other committees we're missing? Okay. 3.3 is Assistant Superintendent's update on authentic learning. Should we do this, or do you want to do all the reports and go back, or do you want to?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sorry, do you mind if I just do quick?
Please.
Julia, and
Yeah,
then?
of course.
Because then we can really enjoy it, not feel, sorry to cut you off. So let's go to 3.4, which is Assistant Superintendent's update on the whole child, Ms. Chung.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to report on special education tonight. I know typically before the pandemic, we would be pretty much kind of settling down and be done with our annual reviews by end of May, but I think this year, like we did last year, it's been a little bit more challenging, trying to be mindful of pulling teachers from classes and all of that, and so we're gonna continue our annual reviews into June. Looking at what we've done this year and the changes that we made, and I know one of the things that we're going to probably want to do moving forward is, even after the pandemic, are there things that we had put into place this year that we should continue? And I think one of the things that we, I think would be good would be for us to continue with our virtual meetings, because it actually really helps for parents, I think, especially if they're commuting. It just makes it so much easier for parents to just click on from their work and participate in the meeting. So that's one of the things that I think we're looking to maybe hold on to for at least next year. We'll also see what other changes that we've made this year that might make sense for us to hold on to. In terms of surveillance testing last week, we actually had very small numbers, but part of it was because we had the vaccination here last week on Wednesday. So instead of doing the surveillance testing for middle and high school, we did the vaccination, which I thought was very successful. We had, I believe, close to 150 people. and half of them were Pelham students and residents. And so we're looking forward to having them come back on June 2nd for the second shot. So we're excited about that. Did you have a question for me?
I asked
Yes,
this
sir.
question before. How many of our students did she think had been vaccinated already? What percentage? How many? But apparently we can't collect that data. So I would have liked to. It would have been interesting to know that, but maybe we'll find something out from middle school and high school graduations.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll get information of the 12th graders and the 8th graders ahead of graduation,
Yeah,
right?
right.
But I mean, we can certainly ask parents to let us know if that's something that you would like for us to collect. We can certainly do that.
I think it would be helpful for planning purposes, I would think, for the fall.
Sure.
If it's easy enough.
And two, we did, unfortunately, our vaccination clinic was a day before they approved vaccines for the 12 through 15-year-olds, but we made very clear to the DOH that we loved working with them, and we were very happy for them to come back for another site. I think, though, we were one of their first sites, and they figured out a really great model from their work with us. So now they're doing a series of vaccinations at a lot of different schools around the region. So I think once they get through other people first round, they may consider us for a second round.
I also feel like I've seen in either administrator communications or maybe from you that parents could report if the vaccination status of their children, like for contact tracing purposes, so that they wouldn't have to quarantine if exposed. So I'm sure piecemeal we can get some bits of data.
Yeah, we had a few. I have a list of a few students, but because we really haven't had, where's Wood, any positives in the last couple of weeks, we really haven't had to do the contact tracing, which was really helpful, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully not doing, having to contact trace. But I think overall, I think the county numbers are very low, so I think things are looking good. So I'm excited about that.
Are you hearing anything, Julia, about teachers and vaccinations for the fall? Is there going to be any change to requirements or anything?
Not yet.
Not at this point. I think that would have to come from the state. We don't have the authority to. I mean, we would have to negotiate a requirement, but with it not being fully approved, I don't know of any K-12, at least in our region, colleagues, districts, peer districts that are taking that approach yet.
Is that because it's conditionally approved?
Yes.
Julia, I had a question. Can you hear me? I had a question about the annual meetings. You were talking about the success of the virtual meetings from the parent perspective. I'm just curious, for those meetings that students attend, do you find that those reviews are as successful virtually? Like, I know sometimes the older students participate in their own reviews.
That's a great point. I really should ask Mr. Lau, because I don't know if we had as many students participate. I did have a few students in my meetings, but they were home with their parent when they participated. So
I just wonder if
I'll
that
find
would
out.
be as effective
Yeah.
virtually, or if those meetings where the students attend might be better in person.
Right. I'll definitely find out.
Or with the student with their teacher, and with another individual, because I remember Greg talking about that, Mr. Lau talking about that in terms of just the ability to participate in their own annual reviews and contribute and sometimes present. So that was something I know was important to him, obviously. Probably a little different this year, but maybe next year if it's going to be a mainstay practice, that would be nice.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so then we'll move on to Mr. Ricky, Assistant Superintendent's update on finance and facilities.
Thank you and good evening. I guess once again to repeat what Dr. Champ said, thank you to the community and the voters for the passage of the budget, which is great. It's a conclusion of one of the largest parts of time that we go through every year, and I know that's kind of the direction of the policy for the year coming up. So that's terrific, and we'll start planning in about a day or so for next year. There's a couple of change orders on the board agenda this evening. They are change orders that were approved administratively based on authority provided by the board. And again, and I've said this before, just for the record, for these items, they are approved by us because they're under a dollar threshold. However, we need to bring them to the board for notification, and you're voting to accept notification of these change orders. As you can see, there are 4 of them for just under $15,000. The first one has to do with the backflow preventer, and I think we kind of put this under the category of you just can't make these things up. The backflow preventer that was approved by Suez Water and the Westchester County Department of Health when everything was designed was found to be unacceptable once it was installed. So that's that $8,800. The other 3 items are of smaller dollar amounts. One is a frame upgrade for the music room door, the kitchen hood design change, and additional insulation for the roof and for the drains of the roof. So smaller dollar items. Also last week we had an opportunity to meet with the architect, representatives from Triton Construction, 3 members of the school board on the bond steering committee, Mr. Bryce, Mrs. Childs, and Mrs. Young. And again, to talk about our project at Prospect Hill, to pick out the brick and the facade and how everything is going to come together, because we're moving forward on that stage of the project. Also to discuss some other issues related to the Hutchinson project and some potential change orders that we could be seeing coming down the line, and opportunities to provide some feedback for the architect. So I think that was a great opportunity to do that. This evening on the agenda, there's an item for authorization for the superintendent to approve a contract for basically it's a production company to help with our graduation, to live stream our graduation and provide additional audiovisual and technical services. This vendor was selected as part of a request for quote process, which we did in a publicly advertised manner. We had 3 respondents, and looking at their responses, we really found that there was really only one who provided the detail and the depth of a proposal that we felt we could bring forward to the board. As you look at it this evening, it's established for a not to exceed number, and that's because, as we know, the guidance is changing constantly for what we can have at public assemblies, how close people can sit together. And that'll really play a difference at our graduation with how close families can sit and how much of the field is going to be used at Franklin Field. So one of the larger part of these expenses are their video screens as part of this proposal or this quote. That certainly takes up a certain amount of the expense. And what we want to be careful to do is that we don't obligate ourselves to something that we may not need a month and a half from now. So we're still finding out what those kind of cutoff dates are from the vendor. So if we say we want to go with the full package, but then June 15th we find out the guidance has changed, we don't need it. We want to be able to have that flexibility with the vendor, and they're going to tell us if we have that, to be able to say no, that's not, we're not going to pay for that part of it. So we're still in the stages of doing that, but we just want to make sure we're able to work with this vendor, especially since the next board meeting is in early June. And as they said, after months of not being busy, they're driving about 400 miles an hour right now, understandably. This is something that they're doing quite a bit of, and especially with live streaming.
And this cost is for both the high school and the middle school
Well,
ceremonies.
when we put up, thank you for asking, when we put the quote out, we weren't sure what the circumstances would be related to the middle school, so this quote is actually just specifically for the high school.
Oh, okay, I thought I saw middle
Yes,
school
so
listed
when you
here.
look at
Okay.
the request for quote, we did ask for a little bit broader, because we weren't sure where we were going to be at that point too, and then narrowing it down. Again, the quote we have is for a high school graduation on Saturday morning.
And I would just add to a lot of that goes back to the audience size. With middle school, we're only allowing 2 guests per student. So even if they do have to stay 6-foot distanced in family groups, it's not going to spread out, expand through the entire field the way 4 guests per high school student will expand for the graduation. So in order to provide that visibility, if we have to work with current group guidance, we want to make sure that was possible on the field and then the live stream. Yeah.
And just the high school is being live streamed, not the middle school?
Yes.
Okay.
We're looking to record the other events and post it after the fact, but it'll be asynchronous.
Perfect.
And other than that, I think that's all I have for this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Garcia, for waiting. It's your turn. Authentic learning.
Yeah. So I'll be joined by some of my colleagues this evening, which is, also is representative that this is not just obviously a solo show. It's the team of administrators and teachers who really support the entire learning program. So we've been asked to talk a little bit about what our experience has been this past year. So, I named it Lessons from the Pandemic. Well, obviously we can write volumes for the rest of our lives about lessons we've learned from this pandemic. And we'll be learning about it for the next 20, 30 years as well. So we just needed to really kind of have a better understanding through the different learning programs we've had this year for the past 13 months, how the kids are doing. And we're talking more about the academic piece. So tonight's overview, I'm just going to briefly talk about our learning program over the past 13 months. But most importantly, we're going to specifically talk about ELA and math, the data story, what we learned from and the meaning of this data, and then next steps, short and long term. Short term, what's going to happen this summer, the work opportunities for kids, and then long term, what's going to happen next school year and beyond. Try to support our kids and make sure that they're back on track. So, I hate to really go back in time. As a parent, my life, the way we look at education, the way we look at life as professionals is definitely different than it was 25 years ago, 26 years ago when I started, when I was just a 24 or 25-year-old and no responsibilities at that time. Now, obviously, my view is of a parent, of a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old. So when I think about what it was like, life back in 2020 of March and then April and May, it was really for me, and I think for many of us, it was the fear of the unknown. We did the best we could. We had limited understanding of how long it was going to be. We had new resources we had to employ right away with Chromebooks and Google Classroom, and that type of platform we really didn't use ever at the elementary schools. And that was what we were working with in that full virtual environment that teachers were not trained to do. They were not hired to do, and school districts weren't created, public school districts weren't created to actually do. But we did. We tried our best. And we learned many lessons from those 3-4 months in the full virtual world. But thankfully, as the understanding of what this pandemic's all about and how it affects people, we were able to develop with many of parents and teachers alike to try to understand how we can reopen schools. So we have a hybrid experience where we had some cohorts and kids in certain days of the week and then home and Zooming and through the Google Meets at home from September through April. And then thankfully, we came back. First the elementary schools, middle school, and now the high school. Full in person and also that full virtual opportunity for those kids who haven't returned, which has happened for the past few months. And one thing I'll say, and I've said this I think for many people when I talk about, what can we do to bring the kids back? How can we close that gap? Which I'll have my own thoughts about that because everyone's experiencing some disruption. So we're not alone in this. This is not a Pelham problem. It's a universal problem everywhere. So when we look at some data, we look at data, how are we performing with the rest of the nation pretty much. But the key thing is that, our kids came back. And there's no substitute for learning and improvement at learning, measuring of learning, understanding how kids are learning, and how we can better teach than having them in front of us. So we started that full-time in April. We're now in May. We have more data that we're going to collect with AimsWeb in the next few weeks. So the data isn't complete, but I know that I'm sure my colleagues, principals can attest, the teachers have seen growth already in that short period of time. And that's a very important thing I want to emphasize with the community. There's no substitute for that in-person experience. So expected September 21, yes, have the kids back again. What that looks like, yes, we want to replicate what's happening now. We want to do it safely. But the question, which we'll get into another time, are we still offering the full virtual for those who still have the need? And we can get into that a little later on in the next few months because, there's an expectation out there, not just the community, but, in terms of guidance from the state, we better be ready. because there will still be a need, and we have to be ready to prepare for that type of experience for those kids who are not part of the classroom with our teachers right now. So I will pass this off now to my esteemed colleagues, and I'll say that besides the principals who run the building so well and make sure that the learning experience for the kids but also for the teachers are at the highest level. I have 3 directors. John Sabalos, as you know, the Director of Technology, and how important he has been throughout this pandemic. We would not have been able to survive it at all without really his quick wit and being able to adapt so quickly and help us adapt technologically to make sure that we were able to have virtual experiences for our kids. But I know that Dr. Callahan used the sports metaphor, right, or the references talking about Lisa, and I like to do that too. And I don't make light of it, but when I was a kid, I was a Yankees fan, and some of you, I date myself in the late '70s. And if you remember, the Bronx Zoo and what the Yankees were like inside that clubhouse. And I remember when there was a Reggie Jackson quote when he said, I'm the straw that stirs the drink. So I may remember that reference. And Thurman Munson, I know, wasn't too happy about that. But besides that, when I think about, my 2 colleagues, they're the ones which really help us align vertically. They help the principals, but they help the learning program so that we understand what the system is like. And those are the eyes and ears, and they help facilitate it. So we're going to have Dr. Callahan, and first we'll have Dr. Thompson talk about the ELA story.
Thanks, Dr. Garcia. So part of our story includes all of the everyday information that our teachers gather, whether the students are virtual or they are in front of them. Our teachers were gathering informal data through conferencing with students, through small group work, through assessing in many different ways within the classrooms. Combined with that, we also knew right off the bat that we needed to conduct our typical benchmark assessments. We waited to get the students acclimated back to school, so we put them off for a couple of weeks. And then we began first with our Ames web assessment, which I'll speak about in a moment. And then we administered to our students K through 5 a reading benchmark assessment. So the reading benchmark assessment that we administer is given to students 3 times a year. And it's a research-based tool, and it tells us a student's instructional level in reading and their independent level in reading. So the benchmark assessment, using that data, we're able to identify if a student needs to be discussed in our data teams on MTSS. Those are our intervention teams. It also helps teachers shape what instruction is going to look like on a very individualized level. So we administered that benchmark in the fall, again in the winter, and we're administering it right now through the end of the year. Combined with informal and reading benchmarks, we then add a benchmark assessment known as Ames Web Plus, and it's given 3 times a year to students in reading and in math. This is a nationally normed reference assessment. So for our students, it tells us where we lie in terms of our mean, of where is a child's mean compared to a national percentage mean. And we use it throughout the year, again, to move students in and out of support, to form our small groups in reading and within the classroom, but also it helps to shape the program of our support. So the Ames Web data is actually very, very important. The test is made up of, the assessment's made up of numerous subtests, ranging from phonological awareness, print concepts, vocabulary for the upper grades, reading comprehension, silent reading fluency, and oral reading fluency. Okay. So these were administered to our children, and our Ames data, if you could just switch to the next slide. Our Ames data, which this is obviously not for you to interpret, but just if you're curious, you can see that there are dark lines that go from the yellow, the green to the blue. The dark line is where our students, excuse me, that's the target line. It's late. So basically what we want to perform better than. And there's a lighter black line that's in the green. That lighter black line, if you're looking at the left, shows where our students' mean is. So how did our students do overall in 6th grade? And we look at that data over time, and we can dig all the way down and look at a child's data over the course of several years and see their rate of growth. Okay, just switch. So what we saw when we looked closely at the reading benchmark data, and we compared it to the reading benchmark data in the winter of last year, was not a tremendous amount of variability. We saw the greatest difference in student independent reading levels with our 1st graders. This is basically a fact that's seen in data. It's been across the nation on the state level. We work closely with our consultants from Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. They told us about this in the fall. They said, watch, work closely, give support. A lot of small group work with your 1st graders. They're learning how to read, phonics, phonological awareness in kindergarten, and they were home for the last portion of kindergarten. So when we looked at our reading benchmark data, that was the grade that we noticed the greatest amount of variability, and we specifically shifted our intervention and our in-class Tier 1 interventions to support them. When we looked at our AIMS-Web data, and we compared our mean composite scores, so that's taking all the subtests together, for kindergarten 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th, we did see a difference of about 2 percentage points. So a decrease in the mean percentage from winter of 2020 to winter of 2021. We saw actually an increase, which was interesting, in our mean composite scores for grades 3, 6, 7, and 8. So our students actually did better this winter in those grades than they did last winter. Even though that percentage mean was lower in K1, 2, 4, and 5, when you dig deep into the data and you look at student growth, the measurements of student growth, or the rate of growth for a student from fall 2020 to winter 2021, was quite remarkable. The greatest amounts of growth were made for our kindergartners and our 1st graders. So what that showed us is that having the students back in the building, working with them one-on-one in person, all of the one-on-one intervention time really did make a difference to help them progress and catch up to where they need to be. Obviously, our spring data is vitally important to ensure that that growth is continuing and that we're back on the level that we need to be at. So what did we learn from the data? So as I said, what we noticed with our primary grades, particularly our 1st grade, is really something that's being seen across the nation and is being noted by many of the research institutions. And so we obviously came into this year realizing that some of our readers would be about 2 to 3 months behind, and we needed to measure them, watch them, and provide the interventions. We realized, and we knew this from the spring, that teaching phonics and teaching phonemic awareness over a screen, or if you're in the building wearing a mask, is no easy task. And the teachers, were communicating that with their principals, the levels of frustration. Students need to see mouths moving, they need to hear it. Thank you to the PEF, the Pelham Education Foundation, for sending our K1 and 2 students home in September with full phonics foundations kits. And that certainly helped, because when they were home on their hybrid days, they were able to participate. But it certainly was something that we became well aware of and were looking for solutions to throughout the year. We did utilize quite a lot of online tools and resources to help and support the phonics instruction. We did see, and we've learned that once our students were back in school more often, their rate of growth increased quite significantly. And we also noticed that the rate of growth and the performance for our middle schoolers was actually quite remarkable. And what that showed us is that our shifts in terms of intervention and the design of our intervention classes over the last couple of years at the secondary level in the middle school have made a difference in terms of effectiveness. It also, I think, taught us a lot about what's needed in terms of the MTSS process in the middle school, or the intervention process, and that our shifts in our 6th grade English enrichment program, which is that second period of reading and writing that 6th graders enjoy, and we enjoy having with them, because that class obviously does help our 6th graders grow as readers and writers. We also realize that direct instruction and the time that we have with the students was vitally important to supporting their rate of growth. And so our program through Teachers College, which really does emphasize independent reading and writing and volume and stamina, they shifted their philosophy in part to emphasize more really tight, direct mini lessons. And so they produced for us mini lesson videos, and we produced a whole bunch ourselves to fill in gaps, and making those mini lessons available. We heard good things from our teachers and from our parent population that it did help students sometimes revisit lessons, and they were also used by interventionists. I mentioned the increase of supplies at home. We're pleased that in terms of the amount of student growth that we've seen since September, we've also seen an increase in the utilization of some of the programs that we've purchased in the spring. So a lot of funding was invested in allowing our students greater access to e-texts. There was also a Pelham Education Foundation grant that now has opened up a world of Sora, which is a whole new, it's changed really the ballgame for equity and access in terms of access to texts. That has helped our students keep the volume up. We do watch those programs to ensure that students are using them. And where we notice great usage, we look at how students are performing on some of the very simple short assessments that are given. But we more just want the students to read. And we do see them using those online programs. Another change this year that we learned pretty quickly last spring was that we needed to streamline our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. So for the first time this year, Siwanoy and Colonial have a dedicated interventionist. So that interventionist is not splitting their day between two schools, and that makes a huge difference. It gives them more time to meet with students, the availability to support teachers in the classroom with Tier 1 interventions. We streamlined what the interventionists were using, and that is we utilize a Fontes and Pinnell program called Level Literacy Instruction, and this instructional kit is based on very specific direct instruction, and then work through reading comprehension, word study, in very interactive, engaging books. So we're using that across the 4 schools at the elementary level. We increased training in Wilson reading for our Tier 3 students, so we have more specialists now that are trained in Wilson so that we can support those students. And we actually had an extra interventionist at Hutchinson, which really has helped this year support our K-1-2 students. So in terms of learning from this data and making plans for the summer, we talked very early on about expanding our summer opportunities for students who needed more support, who we didn't want to go off for the summer and not read and write and practice their math skills. So we have a program that we have offered for a long, long time called Summerstars, which was specifically targeting our Hutchinson population, our Tier 1 students, our Title I students. this program has been expanded for this summer, and we're pulling in our students that are at the target, so they're about the lower end of performance on AIMSweb, or showing that they are still about half a year behind in instructional reading levels. So our population of students is expanded for the summer. Enrollment in Summerstars is based on more than just AIMSweb and our reading benchmarks. It's also based on teacher recommendations and recommendations from the data teams at each of the elementary schools. Summerstars is a 5-week program. It's 20 days, half day, and when the students are with us, they have a segment of the morning specifically for reading, word study, and writing, and then they have part of the morning specifically for math, and they have a little bit of playtime in there too, because they're still children and it is the summer. And then they leave us by noon. We are excited this year that we expect to have pretty full classes based on the response to the invitations that have gone out. The instruction in Summerstars is very individualized. We give pre- and post-assessments in reading, writing, and math, and the lessons are targeted and direct. For our middle schoolers who are in need of more support over the summer, we invite students who are incoming 7th, 8th, and even those who need more help over the summer in 8th grade going into 9th. And again, they are given support in reading, writing, and in math. The enrollment is based upon the data that I mentioned, plus some more data that Dr. Callahan is going to bring up, as well as report card data. The middle school program is for 15 days. It runs for 3 weeks. Again, a half-day program, and the instruction in this program is very targeted and direct. And then this summer, for the first time in a very long time, we are actually offering our high schoolers who perhaps have struggled during this year to recover some of the credit that they might have lost. And so credit recovery is very different than a summer school program. Credit recovery is specifically having the students meet the standards and skills of a specific course, and we are focusing on the courses that the state has mandated us to administer Regents exams in, so algebra, living environment, earth science, and English language arts. We are also going to offer credit recovery to students in global history and U.S. history, because those are also required for graduation. And that will run for about a month this summer, half days. So that's our short-term plan. Our long-term plan is obviously to use the data from the spring, from the summer programs, and to take that data and strengthen our Tier 1 interventions, our classroom instructions, because that's really where the heart of support and growth comes from, and then obviously to continue to improve our Tier 2 and 3 interventions with our specialists. So we spent a lot of time analyzing how our Summerstars elementary students grew over the summer, and we worked to maintain that growth, even though they have the month of August off. We also are planning on spending some time this summer and next fall writing curriculum for our classroom teachers. Basically, these are strategy lessons. They're called Tier 1 interventions, as I've been mentioning, and these are things that are offered to all students in the classroom as supports. So they're in addition to the regular reading and writing workshop time. So we'll be writing some curriculum and strategies for Tier 1. We also need to vertically and horizontally align our reading and writing TC units to ensure that we're filling in any gaps. We obviously had less instructional time overall. We got through all of the units that we were supposed to. We're actually right on target, which I think is pretty remarkable and is a testament to the teachers and the support that our TC consultants and our staff developer have given to us, but we need to make sure that there aren't any areas that we want to go back and sort of double down on in the fall in specific units. We need to spend a little more time over the next 6 months looking at our word study program, so that's spelling, vocabulary, and grammar at 3 through 5. One of the things that we have been aware of is that we have a very strong phonics program up through 2nd grade, and then we want to make sure that we continue to have a program that is consistent across the 4 schools. So that is another long-term goal. We want to review some of the online resources in greater depth that we invested money in and decide what we're going to continue with in the long term. And we've already started working with our TC consultants on plans for our professional development sessions next year. We obviously are going to focus a great deal of time on small group and conferring at the primary grades for our K1 and 2 students, but then also supporting our 3 through 5. And then finally, we began this work, but we're doing it really in collaboration with Teachers College. The idea of ensuring that our classroom libraries and our mentor texts that are used in K through 5, but also in 6 through 8, serve as windows and mirrors for our students, and that we have a culturally responsive language arts curriculum. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Callahan to talk a little bit about math and take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. This year in the pandemic for sure upended our approach to teaching math, really heavily K-5, but really throughout the district. And just to familiarize yourselves, with what we're doing, if you're not totally aware, is we use the Singapore math program, and part of that program is called the CPA model, which is concrete, pictorial, abstract. The first facet of that is a concrete application of knowledge, where we use lots and lots of manipulatives. If you can't touch manipulatives, that becomes really hard. So our solution, literally, Beth Finkelstein, the professional developer, and I literally spent the summer bagging manipulatives and sending them home to parents so that they would use them at home. That's not a replacement for using manipulatives with a teacher, right? Another part of our practice, when a teacher teaches in the Math and Focus model, the second piece, there's something called a teach-learn. That's where the teacher kind of guides instruction with the student. It's very student-centered. There's almost like an inquiry-based approach in a teach-learn. But the second piece in our Math and Focus model is called, basically it's a shared practice, where two or more students actually work together in a group. Obviously, the pandemic upended that as well. When we started to get breakout rooms with the technology, it became easier to do some of those things too. But one of the stories of the pandemic is it kind of sent our math program back about 6 or 7 years to the teacher teaches and the student learns, and there's not a whole lot of manipulation of like some of those concrete features they used to have in front of them. So, Dr. Garcia knows that I was pretty horrified about the pandemic and what that might mean for our approach to teaching Singapore math. I think the good news is when we look at the data, and as Dr. Thompson pointed out, we're looking at winter to winter because we don't have spring data yet. So if you consider that our testing window for AIMSweb, the data that we're looking at, was still when we were still in a hybrid model. We were not yet back to full in-person teaching. Our hope is that as we start to see some of the spring data, which we're about to collect, that we see additional growth because we can use some of those practices that we were not able to use during the pandemic. So it really led to an approach that had to be super flexible. And there was a lot of work to be done by the teachers, administrators, and in particular, our professional developer, Beth Finkelstein. So I just wanted to show you this slide, if you take a look, just to be totally transparent about what this means when we look at the AIMS data. If you look at the mean from last year to this year and all of the grades, I put down the bottom where the difference is. So you see in some grades we have no difference in the mean. In grade 2, we actually went up, but in some of the other grades we went down. Now this isn't telling the whole story, because as Maria will say, we run data like crazy in a lot of different areas. Lots of sub-tests. This happens to be a composite of all the tests we use within the Ameswood Plus platform. But when we tweak it a little bit and look at some areas like computational fluency, how quickly students can kind of calculate things, or how they know numbers, we actually see differences here that are, I think, more telling than some of the mean data. But if you look at grades 3, 4, and 5, you do see a dip. If you look at grades 7 and 8, you do see a dip. In grade 6, interestingly enough, we increased contact time, and I've got to thank Dr. Champ and Dr. Garcia for allowing us to do this. When we went from 5th grade to 6th grade, we went from 60 minutes elementary, typically in a standard program, to 40 minutes. And our math teachers were like, we can't do the Common Core in 40 minutes a day. So we added contact time in 6th grade. I can't speak directly to why that mean would stay the same, but it would be nice to, as we kind of go through the data a little bit, it'd be nice to see if that contact time really impacted what we're seeing in the middle school. I would suspect that it does. On the right, if you take a look, this isn't a mean, it's a median. And you can't see it very well, but our median scores are relatively where they normally are. The exception, actually grade 3 is always a little low. It's very low this year. But if you look at the bars, there's two things I would point out that kind of, really tell you the story. On the left-hand side, if you look at the top part of the bar, and you go through our our elementary school grades, 2, 3, 4, 5, you see a pretty steep slope, right? If you look at this year, we still see a slope, but it's not as steep. So that's really showing that our growth is not where it normally would be. Then when you get to the middle school, and this is something we've really been working on, and I'd be, again, interested to see this data over the next couple years because we're changing contact time in the middle school, you start to level off, and that's historical. Like we've done that actually traditionally in the middle school. But you kind of see that leveling off. What you notice, especially in the bar that stands out the most, grade 5, is our top scores are not as high as they normally are. However, if you look at the bars, they are more compressed, which means your scores are kind of like distributed in the range, not as high, not as low, but they're all kind of falling within that range still. So this is a better story than I expected, but as the director of math, immediately my mind goes to what do we do, right? And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. I want to show you the next slide that has the K1 numbers on it. You're seeing the same thing. I would point you to right from the bottom of the slide. If you go up, you see the mean for kindergarten in 2019 and 2020, from 47.4 to 46.5, and from 62.2 to 61.6. So you see a lower mean there. I'm going to tell you, if I look at our entire program, the grades that always make me the most nervous when I see a dip is kindergarten and 1st grade, because that's really all the research says that's where you got to jump in and fix any problems that you see if you really want to make a difference long term. So this is something we're really monitoring. I want to see what the spring data looks like. I'm hoping to see growth here because, again, going back to our kindergartners and 1st graders, they're not using the manipulatives like they used to, and that's how we teach. So I'm hoping that as we get a little bit more live instruction, we are able to do more of the things that we have traditionally done in our Singapore math program. So that really is a very quick summary of these two slides. Again, if you look at the ranges, you see the ranges from 1920 to 2021 are still relatively close. So that's an interesting part of the story, and it makes me, I feel a little bit better that we don't see really, really low ranges here, or low parts of the range. Thank you. So to kind of give you a brief summary, and again, I've run this data on a whole bunch of different things. There's like a Common Core subcomponent. So that's like how students do with like practical applications. And I've also run the data on, how well are students understanding numbers, right? And each one tells a different story. And interestingly enough, if you look at what I just showed you was last year's 3rd grade compared to this year's 3rd grade. right? I also ran the numbers following the same kids, right? And as you follow the same kids in their cohort, the story's actually not that bad. You start to see them distributed pretty much the same way. So I'm going to be honest with you, really, we did take a hit, and this data does show us that hit. Now what do we do about it? So Ames Web data, the other thing, and Maria kind of alluded to it, normally when we do Ames Web data, our national norm number is enormous. This year when we looked, it was not, which suggests that not every school district was doing this kind of data tracking with fidelity. So you got to be careful with that a little bit when you look at national norm data and our norm data and how different we are from the national, because usually the schools that are doing it with fidelity are the higher performing schools. So your national norm might be altered by that particular value. So Ames Web data suggests that there's been an impact on learners this year, as I think would probably be common sense for most people, right? Mean testing values are lower in K, 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. So 2 and 6 are the exception. Scores are still above the national norms except for grade 3. And the gap between our data and national norms has closed. So usually we're a lot higher when compared to the national norms than we are right now. So that's a little bit troubling when we look at the data. So to be a little bit more, I guess, proactive about how we address this, we'll go to the next slide. I think this is from a variety of factors. I think virtual learning has impacted math instruction for sure. The high school teachers would certainly tell you that as well. Contact time has been an issue. The only grade where we increased contact time is 6th grade, and that's where the mean stayed the same. We also, as I mentioned, departed from some of our key instructional tenets of teaching Singapore math, which was very, very difficult. The other thing, to be honest with you, sometimes parents are a little bit more math phobic than they are reading phobic, right? So Common Core is new to a lot of parents. I didn't learn Common Core. So when you try to teach your kid Common Core, it sometimes is a little bit more of a struggle for parents to support their kids at home when they're learning in a Common Core model. So I would suspect that's probably part of this as well. What are we going to do about it? So I'm planning to adjust our curriculum to mitigate these effects, and I'll talk about what that means in a minute. But we're also looking for additional contact time to happen. We're going to have more contact time, I think, now that we're in person again. I would anticipate that next year's schedule would have a lot more time in it than it did this year, which means more interventions, more time for math, and more hands-on learning in math that's needed for our Singapore approach. A really positive story, I want to thank Julia and Steve again for supporting this. We've started what I would say is a pilot, but it's probably more expansive than a pilot, of something called Dreambox Learning in our elementary schools. Actually, a couple of our elementary school teachers are here, and I've had some pretty good conversations with Ms. Gilbert over Dreambox Learning and some of the impacts it's having. So I ran some data on our Dreambox Learning program, and it's kind of like a game-based learning program for kids. They really like it. It's easy for parents. And what we're seeing is kids are doing it when it's assigned. And pretty remarkably, just in this kind of like pilot group, if they've done it 5 times or more since our rollout of Dreambox, we actually see a full grade and a half progression in the curriculum. So when we look at things in math, there's like curriculum delivery and then how much math you know, right? So some kids can be really, really good at math, but they haven't covered all the curriculum. So those are kind of 2 different things. This Dreambox Learning approach is like, okay, where are you? 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade in Common Core. Well, so if they did it 5 times or more per week with this Dreambox pilot, they moved a grade and a half. If they did it less than 5 times and more than 3 times, they moved half a grade over the course of a year. So we're really excited about that particular program. That's Pelham data, so that's our own data. We've started to roll that out. We weren't one-to-one when we originally rolled it out, so it was tough to do it with fidelity with all of our elementary school kids, but we've started to do it more and more with the help of our principals. So that is a positive story. We hope to use it more for the kids who might be struggling in math, and gaming is a fun way for them to engage in it because it is a research-based technology for math remediation. So again, big shout out to Julia for, I think, finding it, and for Steve for helping to fund it. I think this is probably the most important point. We don't have the data from the spring when they're back with us. So we're going to be collecting that data. We're going to try to wait a little bit to collect that data because the kids haven't been back all that long. But we really do want to have like a spring to spring comparison, not a winter to winter comparison, because we're really looking at right now a time where we're totally hybrid. So I'm not sure that's totally convincing data. So we're going to look at the full data set, as Maria, Dr. Thompson pointed out earlier. She went through our entire remediation opportunity programs for the summer. The one thing that she didn't mention is that the entire middle school is fully populated at this point. So we are running, there's not a single room left in the middle school to run a program this summer. So we will be totally, whether it's the high school program, the middle school program, or the elementary program, as our only fully air-conditioned building in the district, this building's packed from the basically the first day after July 4th recess, all the way to the first week in August. So, and special ed is also included in that with their programs as well. So we're proud that we've expanded those programs, and we are pretty much going to be at capacity in the middle school. The other thing that Dr. Thompson alluded to is our credit recovery program. The other thing to know about that program is any student that gets credit recovery before the end of August and passes credit recovery does not have to take a Regents exam. So the waiver that we're getting for June applies through August. So one of the reasons we really wanted to do the credit recovery program is we don't want a kid who's moving on from living environment that might not have done well, but they're moving on from it, right? If they move on from it, we have to go to them next winter or spring and say, you got to pass your Regents exam. And that seems a little ridiculous given the circumstances we've had this year. So we've really invested all of our resources into trying to get those high school kids that might fall into this bucket into credit recovery, and that's really been our emphasis. So the other thing, and Maria mentioned this too, actually I skipped a bullet, but complete vertical planning. Some people ask me, Tom, why aren't we doing summer enrichment, right, in math? And I'm going to be totally honest with you. If you're coming out of a pandemic, it's a beautiful summer, right? Kids have been cooped up all year, and your kid doesn't particularly like math to begin with. The best way to get them to grow with a mindset in math is not to put them in a 2-hour program when it's a beautiful day and make them try to learn math. There's actually studies that show that can do the exact opposite. Now, sometimes what it does if you have a summer enrichment program, the kids who already like math will go. And then you'll actually deepen the divide between the kids who actually may have had some support in math and are doing well, and the kids who actually need more structural support. So I think there are merits to that approach. I don't think that approach is as fruitful as what I would call a complete vertical planning approach, where we start to go, okay, what is the data saying our kids are struggling in, and how do I change the following year's curriculum to make sure we cover that? So we remediate over time. We don't try to do like a one-shot, try to get it done in 2 weeks, catch up for a year and a half of pandemic in 2 weeks, and then if kid doesn't do it, they're super stressed out, and now they go into September hating math more than they already did. So there's that side to math enrichment, but there's also, listen, I'm going to tell you there are benefits to it too. That's our reasoning for a vertical planning approach instead of a summer enrichment approach. And just from a logistical standpoint, we also don't have the space. So that's also a very, very big part of it. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to audit math-related technology platforms. We're going to develop some grade-level September math assessments. So teachers will give kind of what we call a formative assessment. It's assessment that doesn't really count for anything, just to see what they're coming into us with and what they remember. And we'll use that to inform our plan for the rest of the year. So if there are things that the students are coming in, we're not going to just barrel through the curriculum and pretend like they already know what they need to know when we start. So that's part of our plan as well, including, and then we're also going to provide additional training for interventionists and support staff. So our long-term plan is, again, establish that September baseline through those assessments I just talked about, adjust pacing to integrate components of previous grade. I talked about that too. one of the things we were not able to cover in the time that we had this year, the full Common Core curriculum as we normally would. So one of the questions I get is, Tom, what did you decide to leave in? Well, we decided to leave in the things that spiral from grade to grade, and it's really, really important that you have that stuff, right? So in the lower grades, there's a lot of number sense pieces to that. In the upper grades, there's a lot with fractions. What did we take out? The biggest thing we took out so we could cover the curriculum in the pandemic was actually measurement. So people don't realize that Common Core math has a measurement piece to it. So we took out measurement and we said, listen, our science curriculum cross-cuts with math. So what we're going to do next year is do a lot more measurement in science to make up for the measurement we took out this year in math. And hopefully, using that double-pronged approach, we can help beef up that piece. It was a very, very deliberate decision, and our Science 21 program allows us to kind of make that decision and kill two birds with one stone. We're going to try to expand the use of Dreambox because our research is telling us that it's working. It's going to be very, very important to reestablish math and focus best practices. I think one of the things that will be our biggest challenge is getting back to the program that we used to do with Fidelity before the pandemic and getting back to that more student-centered involved approach to mathematics that we actually prided ourselves in before the pandemic happened. So that's going to require additional professional development to reaffirm that CPA model that I told you about, and then also to reaffirm that, especially that shared practice piece that's part of the Singapore math pedagogical model. I want to throw in one thing, and Steve, you didn't know I was going to do this, so feel free to throw something at me, but I just want to throw a shout out. I didn't talk about science tonight, but we've been doing supplementary science programs throughout the pandemic, and I really have to thank Dr. Kim Riegel of the Pelham Junior League, who has been phenomenal at getting these extra programs going every single month, like Ask a Scientist. Dr. Champ came to a couple of them. They were super duper fun, and collaborations like that, there are some others. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce now and a couple other organizations in the community. I want to thank everyone, the Board of Ed, our administration, our principals, our teachers. It's been a group effort. There's been some trying times for sure, but I think by and large we've all come together to support our kids the best way we know how. And I am super impressed by the community organizations that lend their support to math and science in this community. It really is very, very impressive, and I think it's what makes Pelham Pelham. So I've got to give them a shout out, and in particular Dr. Kim Riegel for the work of the Junior League. And then always, a lot of the technologies we cited tonight are really thanks to grants from the Pelham Education Foundation. So without the support of the Board of Education, for sure, the PEF, Jim getting state money and giving it to us, all of you guys, thank you for all the work you do to support our instructional program. We're going to do the best we can to make sure our kids are coming out of the pandemic with as much support from us as possible. And special thanks to our direct supervisor, Dr. Garcia, who makes sure he keeps us in line. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks. I have a quick question for you, Tom.
Yeah.
Can you walk me through a credit recovery scenario? Because
Sure.
it is somewhat new. I know we've done it in the past, but for example, particularly the part about not taking the Regents again,
Yes.
right? So just what does that scenario look like?
That's a great question, and we actually formed a committee. Maria and I are on it, along with Beth Antonelli in the high school, and we asked that question because we had to go through what the state was allowing us to do and make sure we were going to meet the state requirements. So basically what we've decided on, and feel free to jump in if I say something wrong, but we're going to hire teachers in the disciplines that are certified in those areas because they have to be. And we're going to look at it at really a case-by-case basis. We're going to see what led to the student failing that particular course. We're going to design an individualized plan that remediates those areas and allows the student to accrue credit in the areas where he or she did not receive credit. And then basically the teacher will develop and implement that plan, give assignments, assess learning, and at the end, credit will be granted for that class.
Okay, and they won't have to take the Regents because they'll get it in the right time frame, right?
So that's exactly
okay.
right. So if you, the technical regulation is if you pass the class, including with credit recovery, passing the class counts as passing the Regents until August.
Okay.
There's several Regents, obviously, that doesn't apply to because there's several Regents that aren't being given.
Yep.
So that's algebra. So it'll apply to algebra, earth science, living environment, and ELA. And then we're going to do credit recovery in those other areas because our students need it for graduation credit and not necessarily Regents credit.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for presenting all of this to us. I know, Dr. Garcia, we've had some conversations. Obviously we've heard a lot from the community concerns about what the impact of this pandemic was, where there was learning loss. I was hearing anecdotally it wasn't quite as bad as everybody was worried about, but it's so reassuring to know all of the data that you're collecting, all the plans you have in the immediate and in the future to adjust. I think it's a huge testament to all of you guys that we have been scaffolding so much of what our students learn K through 12 for the last, as long as I've been on the board, and I think that also really supports us in this journey to assess where we are. I just had a couple of questions. Will things like Dreambox be accessible to students in the summer from home?
So our online programs will be accessible until the beginning of August. And the beginning of August, we have to go through a process of basically bringing down rosters and then uploading new ones. And everything needs to be ready for when the teachers and students come back. So we do need several weeks to do that. So I believe it's around August 6th. But we will put out to parents and students to let them know when that exact date is.
Perfect. And I guess the last question I have is, have parents already been notified if their student belongs in one of these summer programs?
So Summerstars, absolutely. With the high school program, we do need to wait.
You have to wait on the Regents, yeah.
We have preliminary lists, but we're waiting. And the same at the middle school. We do have our preliminary lists. And I believe that counselors have started having conversations with parents.
I did, because that was the follow-up question that a lot of parents said is, well, what about our summer plans, camp, that sort of thing? We would need to plan around it. So, but at the elementary level, students, parents would have been contacted.
Those invitations went out.
Very good. Thank you so much for all that.
I also had a question. In the upper grades where, for instance, maybe there are classes that more rely on the prior class, so like Algebra 1, Algebra 2. Where, like Algebra 2, by the time the kids get to that class, they'll have to do the whole curriculum, whereas they may not have done the whole curriculum of Algebra 1, and we'll still only have the one school year in which to do it. So I don't know, I apologize if you mentioned that, but I'm particularly concerned about those scenarios.
No, it's a fantastic question. And I met the 6 through 12 math teachers today, and that was our topic. So we call it, and sometimes we use a lot of jargon, right? So I would have missed it too. But we call it vertical curriculum planning. And what that means is we pull the teachers together and we say, okay, what weren't you able to cover? What is your data showing us about where the gaps are? And then what we do is we say, okay, before you start your curriculum next year, here's what we have to remediate. So we call that vertical curriculum planning. So just to give you an example, right? We're a little bit worried in Algebra 2 about the stuff that kind of like goes into pre-calculus and how far we're getting in Algebra 2. That was a big part of the conversation today. So we brought the Algebra 2 and pre-calculus teachers together and we said, okay, for next year, where do you anticipate leaving off? Where should that pre-calc teacher pick up? And then what we do is we look at the pacing calendar, is what we call it, for the whole year, and then we make adjustments to that pacing calendar to accommodate for that front-loaded remediation. And sometimes that means you're able to kind of pull out things that aren't super important for things that are more important. We're very, very fortunate, and the board supported this several years ago. Dr. Champ and Steve Garcia did as well. We're not tied to the Algebra 2 Common Core curriculum, and for pre-calculus, it's actually a really good thing because we can actually take pieces of Algebra 2, put them in pre-calculus pretty easily because that's a local course for us. Right. So we can do that a little bit easier there. To your point about algebra, interestingly enough, our major issue with students not being where they should be right now is more in Math 8 The algebra teachers, even online, have been doing a lot of work, and we have some seminar classes there. The student isn't in a seminar class. A lot of them are already accelerated, so they're in like 8th grade algebra. Those students, as you probably might suspect, have been doing relatively well comparatively versus the Math 8 kids. So our algebra kids are actually pretty much where they should normally be in the curriculum, believe it or not. We are finding a problem with Algebra 2 into pre-calculus, and we also found a little bit of an issue with pre-calculus into either calculus or the AP calculuses, because we make sure we cover certain things before they go into AP. So we had a meeting today, and we do it in all of our areas to say, okay, for these courses that really rely on, especially Common Core, it's all spiraled, we make sure we look at the spiral and say, okay, where do we leave off in the spiral? We don't, you know, sometimes it's like our teachers are very reflective practitioners, and if you heard them today, you'd be very impressed, because they don't, the conversation isn't about what are we going to cover, it's about what do we make sure they know before we start covering that stuff. And it's really kind of a nice conversation to be a part of. So that's really what we do and how we solve that problem. And it's not a perfect solution. There's a give and take in some places. But our teachers know, I know where we can kind of, what we need and what we don't need. And some of those things will be taken up.
So there won't be any groups of kids who need to make up some of that work in the summer or do any more summer work in advance of that next class?
No, because that's one of the reasons we're going to front load the next class with that formative assessment to make sure, okay, where are they? And what kind of adjustments do we have to make this year? We really don't, because what ends up happening is it becomes a gate a little bit, right? Some kids do the work, some kids don't do the work, and then now you have more disparities, and the teacher has even more places to start from. So we like to kind of reevaluate at the beginning of the year, see how much learning loss happened just because of the summer, because that happens too. And we say, okay, where's the best place to start, and how do I readjust the pacing calendar for the rest of the year?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a comment, and a couple of comments actually.
Sure.
I want to thank Dr. Garcia, first of all, because over the past, I think, several meetings, been lots of discussions about testing and assessment and, you know, what we're not doing, what we can't do, and all that. And, you know, the comment was made, I think I made it, some other people made it, is, you know, how do we know where we're at? How do we know where we're at? And I think this brilliantly answered that question. So thank you. I want to congratulate you two for doing a tremendous amount of work to figure out where we're at and how do we recover? Because that's what this was all about, right? So thank you very much for that. It's really comprehensive, and I think parents should take a great deal of comfort, and I hope they listen to this, so they can really understand in detail how we plan to do it. So that's tremendous. So thank you. It seems to me that just in listening at the beginning, that maybe, perhaps, the pandemic has made us focus a little bit more on what the core elements are that we're doing because we couldn't do it, and then how do we make sure that we get it back or recover from that. So I think that, you know, I have to imagine that the lessons learned through this will be very informative going forward. I mean, just some of the things you talked about tonight in terms of programs that we're using seem to be, you know, point us in certain directions. And I have to believe that this experience has made you all really focus on that instruction delivery and how to make it even better than it has been. So that's what struck me. But I just wanted to thank Dr. Garcia for responding so well to the previous discussions on this subject.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first one to admit, I cannot articulate as well as these two because that's why I have them. And thank you for actually creating those positions for us 5 years ago. You know, you know, we talk about it, and I think, you know, John is very insightful with that piece because, you know, the word that comes to mind is it a reset, this pandemic, right? Does it give us an opportunity to really kind of think about where we are. Because, we trudge along every year. We just kind of like, summertime, we come in September, we do it again. But this kind of, we stopped in our tracks and it stopped everyone. So maybe it gave us an opportunity to really reflect on, where we're at. Gives us new insight to our kids that we really hadn't had to think before about children. I don't open up the whole social emotional piece, but that's in my mind, and our mind in terms of, how do we support kids. But I think it's just very insightful, and I really haven't thought of it that way because, we're just so caught up in everything, right? The key word I talked about, this was Dr. Champ, at the beginning of this pandemic was we just want to survive, and that has a lot of meaning, obviously, besides just surviving, but it also meant surviving, our responsibilities as educators. What are we doing? How do we make sure kids are still learning? So, and I haven't been the most positive person in terms of the pandemic of saying, what have we learned in terms of like, what great things can we take away from this? I think we learned a lot of really interesting pieces of technology that we want to continue with, right? I try to like not think about last year as a parent, right? And we're in our homes and going, what's happening? But I think it's really given us just a chance to kind of reset and kind of like, reflect on where we are and maybe where we need to go. Because this will be sort of a line for us as educators and as parents. We'll remember this. This is sort of like this dark line and what happened before, and then now where do we do with it now? So I appreciate those comments. Thank you. And thank you for me and Tom, and also all the administrators and the teachers especially, because we're not in the classroom with them, but it was remarkable. And I joke about this a lot, but I wish my kids went to school here. And that says a lot, I think, about the types of teachers we have here and the leadership that we have here.
This was so helpful, and I know as you started, this is not a short-term issue that we're going to be staring this down for decades, but let's not shoot too far ahead. But I'm wondering, is there a scenario where we get a similar update at some point, some important data point next year? Would be nice, I think.
Yeah. I think at the
it's
start of the school
important
year,
for the community to hear.
Yeah, maybe at the start, at the outset, we can talk about what we learned from the spring and maybe what we did this summer and how we're sort of planning out for the next school year. I think that's important.
Would be nice, or even next winter when we've had more time in school.
Definitely. And we talk about AIMSweb a lot, but there's also been discussions of even maybe what other programs are out there we can use to benchmark our kids, right? Because we're not promoting that product as like the end-all be-all. We have a lot of issues with it and concerns. Just basically how it gives us data. It's a bear, as you mentioned, for Marie and Tom and the administrators to kind of manipulate it. So this things we're learning about it, and we want to explore further.
Thank you so
much. Can I
ask
a quick question too?
Sure.
Regarding the special education student, what have you found? Have you found it consistent with the comparatives? I'd love to know a little more about that.
I think we should both talk a little bit.
So when I dug down into different subgroups, our special education students in reading, on the reading assessments, pretty much showed the same trends as our general education students. We're very curious. I was talking with one of the principals this morning about really spending time, really digging deeper into the spring data and then comparing it with fall for our special education students to see whether the rate of growth has been, comparable to what the general education students have been seeing, at least in reading. So we'll be able to speak more to that once we have the spring data, but in reading, it's comparable. We see a dip in the early years with our students that we are either already identified or perhaps are already within the process, but it's similar to the general education students.
Yeah, it's really a great question because I think this model of teaching and learning is not the model that students that have individualized plans tend to have in their plans, right? So how we've delivered special education services has been really, really difficult. So I'm going to tell you on the math side, and I'll stay there because it's pretty similar on the science side. But on the math side, if students have difficulties learning and they have accommodations in math, those accommodations have been very, very difficult to provide to the virtual learner. So one of the things that we found as the students, and we started, and Julia started this a few months ago, is we started to bring back the students that had IEPs very deliberately, because some of them were getting particularly poorly serviced by the instructional model. So we found our special ed kids that were, a lot of them in math, that were learning from home, were really, really struggling with learning from home. And sometimes that has to do with a whole bunch of different things. And it could be as simple as like going on for extra help and someone not being there to help them go on for extra help at the time that they needed it when they were at home. So we saw a lot of those kinds of mitigating circumstances with some of our special ed students. We also saw that with general ed students, but we saw a little bit more of it in the data from the special ed students. So now that they've, by and large, come back, we've offered the option actually weeks ago for them to come back. We've seen some upward trends in, I wouldn't say Ames Web data, but more anecdotal data from like our classroom evaluations and from the evaluations that our interventionists and special educators do. But I think, I don't think anybody, again, would be surprised by this. I think they got hit pretty hard because those students tend to respond better to more individualized in-person instruction. So now that they're getting more of that, we're starting to see improved performance.
And having one of those students, I totally agree with everything you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually, pretty early on, right, Maria, in the high school, we got Extended Academy back, and one of the very, very early debates was, do we do it virtual or do we do it live? And Cheryl and Steve will probably remember this, and we were all like, if there's a way to do it live, we got to do it live because the at-home approach is not working. So we brought a lot of those students in, and actually Lisa was one of the people who works with them, and she's super. And we saw some really good results from those extra programs when the kids came back in. I would suspect, and I have to really look at the data more, especially a full year's data set, but I would suspect some of the kids that are at home learning are the ones that are most at risk for being behind as the next academic year starts. And I think that's special ed kids or general ed kids.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I had a couple questions myself, and also I wanted to echo John. I think that so many parents have been wondering about this and hoping that they're watching tonight to get all of this information. And if they're not watching tonight, they can watch it another time and hear your presentation. So thank you very much for that. Tom, I just wanted to clarify, you had said that in addition to comparing, for example, last year's third graders to this year's third graders, you also looked at last year's third graders again this year, so that you measured both ways.
Yeah. Okay. We actually, Maria and I have full data packets, and if you know us, you're probably not surprised by that. We've run every demographic analysis. We've run analysis of special ed versus general ed. We've done cohort analyses. We've done grade by grade analyses. Maria and I were doing growth analyses just to see, there's something called ROI, which is basically rate of improvement. We've run all that. So we do try to do that. In a presentation like this, we kind of just go to means and medians. But that cohort data in math suggests that there are some places, and you saw it with the mean data, that there are students who are not doing as well as they did last year, but there's also quite a few places where they're doing exactly the same as they did last year. When you tweak out the demographics and some of the other things like special ed, you do see where your mean is being pulled down a little bit, and you also see in some places why you're not getting those top scores you used to get. So so that analysis, it's funny, and for data people, as you dig into it, each set tells a different story. So you're like, oh, this one, we need to do more work with like concepts and applications with these guys, but their number sense is fine. And so like that's the kind of, that's the kind of dive we do.
So I had just a specific question. With the summer program, could you just speak a little bit about what the numbers you've invited are this year versus the numbers last year? I know that the high school program didn't exist, but the other programs.
Yeah. So we invited, I believe, over 80 students, whereas last year we invited about 60 into the elementary program. In terms of enrollment, we don't have all the answers yet. 2 years ago, we actually had 60 We had a roster of 60. Right, incoming first through incoming sixth. At the middle school, how was the numbers on that? Right, so typically 30 to 40, and invitations are going out to about 70.
So I just have one more question, I'm sorry. So I understood what you were saying about making up the Regents classes and also the classes that spiral, the class where the information from one year to the next flows. What happens particularly at the secondary level in classes where there isn't a flow to the next year? So the standalone classes.
I have to say that, I mean, at least in the humanities, in terms of not covering the depth, I think everyone could probably agree that we haven't gone as in-depth as we would have hoped, at least in certain places. There were many situations where we had to ask students to watch a video or listen to a podcast or read on their own to get that level of depth, because we just didn't have the minutes with them to be able to capture it within the classroom. When I talk with the social studies teachers about areas where they feel that they haven't been able to spend the time that they would have liked, I hear a lot more about working on research skills a lot more closely and more in depth next year. That's where they feel that they weren't able to spend the time with the students, like going through that process and the spiral that we have developed. That's a concern much more than we didn't get to talk about this particular topic as in depth as we would have liked.
So I guess to Tom's point about preparation for the next level within our school, colleges all over the country are going to be prepared for a group of students who are probably all coming in with the same sort of situation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think now that everybody's back in, you can tell us which was the better cohort. It was definitely B, I'm just saying.
Well, some days it was A, and some days it was B.
Sure.
Sorry.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you very much.
That was
It was really
just
great.
on point.
Very,
for exactly
very
what
helpful.
we're talking here tonight. Thank you. Well done.
Okay, so this brings us.
And please feel free to
Go home.
sleep. Very
Thank
few
you.
hours between now and then. Take care, guys. Thanks so much.
So next is section 4, which is financial reports and motions, and I'm going to take a consent of 4.1 to 4.6. These are items related to certifying the election results, the budget vote, some payment for people working the election, the agreement that we talked about with graduation, and the change order that we heard about. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks,
Second.
Sue. Thanks, Benny. Any questions, comments, anything to add, Mr. Ricky?
Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We already did section, so in section 5, superintendent's personnel recommendations, we already did item 5.1, so I'm going to take a consent of 5.2 to 5.4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Leah. Or Eileen. Do I have a second? Second. Thanks, Sue. Anything to add, or?
I just want to say for the record, I'm getting old when our teachers are young kids that I knew when my kids were young kids. So just wanted to get that on the record.
Oh, I'm way past that. When one of my sons' friends in high school gets tenure here.
Okay. John, you win.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 6 is people personnel services. We have Schedule D. Do I have a consent for 6.1 to 6.2?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Vinny. And my hearing's going. Leah? Eileen?
Eileen, sorry.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Section 7 is new business.
I do have something, so sorry.
Okay. For new
It's
business?
super quick. Yes, new business. It's a time Pauline and I need to start looking at calendar for next year. Normally, the reorganization meeting has to be the first Tuesday in July, but that's a week that many of us tend to be away. So just bringing up
the idea of looking at the week of July 12th through 15th. We have to have it by the 15th. So if, I don't know if you want to talk about it or if you just want to email availability to Pauline. Looking to hopefully have a meeting that week.
In the evening show?
Evening meeting, yes. In the reorg, I think we usually start a little earlier. We're like, well, no, we're doing everything earlier.
Yeah,
We'll start a
yeah.
little bit earlier.
Can you remind me, not that I haven't done this 4 times, but is this the combination of bringing in our new board members, or we do that before this meeting?
That's where the new board members will be sworn in.
Okay, so we do
We're all-
that and the reorganization of
Yep.
board leadership.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So the week of the 12th, we should
Week of
be
the
in
12th.
touch with Pauline.
Yes.
Is the 12th Monday?
I'm asking about any date, the 12th through the 15th. Just would like to find a date that we're all available.
So we should
We
get
don't
back
have to
to-
figure
get
that
back
out
to
right now.
We don't have
Pauline,
to
get
pick
back
it.
to Pauline
No.
with
Right.
dates.
Yes, please let Pauline know
Including
your
you guys.
availability the week of July 12th through 15th.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Eileen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but and I know it was already a week ago, but you did that town hall for me.
I did.
Was there anything, I know we're past elections and everything, but was there anything
it was
relevant?
it was mostly about the elections that were going on and the situations in the different districts. Some of them talked a little bit about what the summer plans were going to be, and I actually was going to just mention that New Rochelle in particular, I think that they have a vast summer program happening, but because it's for such young kids, that they are incorporating like music and art into the day, which was nice. They were the only district that mentioned that. And then a lot of the other districts had not quite figured it out yet. Like I know Scarsdale said that they were anticipating summer for all, but they weren't sure yet. So, and I guess that what they meant is that they would have it open to anybody who wanted it. But most of the other districts were doing it like we are with the invitation. So there wasn't, because it was so dramatically about the budget, about the election, nobody talked about it in any detail.
I figured that was the focus,
Yeah.
given that it was a week before the vote, so. Okay. Do we have any communications or comments from the public? Okay.
Madam President, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second? Second. Thanks, Leah. You guys were like fighting over there for the second. Any questions or comments? Forever hold your peace. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.